Musical manipulation, how Satan will use music to deceive the last day masses. I have a question about the last days prophecies of Revelation 12 and 13. Do you know what the counterfeit trinity is? The three powers of the devil that bring in this last days deception and movement. The dragon, you'll read about this in Revelation 12 and 13. The beast, and the second beast. Now, what do these three represent? I can't give you a Bible prophecy lecture right now, but simply put, that is the devil, religious power, and political power in the last days. And these form a threefold union to join together and push forward the last day deception. And it says the whole world followed the beast. So the entire world nearly, except the narrow road of those following the Lamb, are going to be on board with this counterfeit trinity. What were the three biggest media funeral events in human history? You might say, that seems like a random question. Well, if we can identify the three biggest media funeral events, we know that those are three pretty important institutions, people, powers that those funerals represent. Let's take a look. Top three. People always guess Princess Diana. Nope, not Princess Diana. The top three were Michael Jackson, Pope John Paul II, and Ronald Reagan. Notice the threefold union is represented in these three. The dragon, spiritualism. Michael Jackson, I have a moving wall with mirrors. The king of pop, the king of the spiritualist music industry that is Crowleyan to the core. Michael Jackson, the top funeral of all, the dragon. He is a representative of the spiritualist movement. Second, Pope John Paul II. Second biggest funeral in human history, religious power. Third biggest funeral in human history, Ronald Reagan, political power. We have the threefold union, these three powers that have grown up to prominence in the 20th century and in the 21st century to the point where we are ready now for the last and final swift movements of human history upon planet Earth, the final scenes of Revelation to be fulfilled. Let's think about that first one, though, a little bit more. Michael Jackson. I told you we'd talk about U2 in part 4. This is Bono. He's using eye symbolism, demonic symbolism, devil horns, etc. And this was his alter ego that he was for a while. This sold his soul to the devil guy named Mephisto. And Bono is probably the most political and influential person in the music industry. Also very much into these demonic things, as you can see on the screen. Here's an image of Bono meeting with the most powerful people of the world. You see again religious power on the bottom right. You see again political power on the top row and the bottom left, all the presidents of recent decades. Bono literally clasping hands with the powers that be. And I've read that when the threefold union clasps hands, one writer put it, interestingly, then we know that the marvelous working of Satan is ready to be upon us when the three are united in their efforts. Spiritualism, religious power, and political power. Well, let's look at Daniel as we think about this issue of how the last days will play out. Daniel 3, verses 5 to 6, we read about a false worship system in Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom of Babylon. Here's what it says in Daniel 3. You must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. You've seen this image. You've seen the childhood stories. The three worthies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow down. They stood strong for the Lord in the ancient kingdom of Babylon. But there's a new kingdom of Babylon. In Revelation 17, it describes her as a harlot who rides the beast. And this kingdom is not an actual nation. It's not a resurgence of Nebuchadnezzar's government, but what this is a religious power. This is a movement, an institution in the last days. And she is also called Babylon. So when we hear Babylon in Revelation 17, we should hearken back to Babylon of Daniel 3, and let's take a look at some similarities. Babylon of Daniel 3 was obviously called Babylon. There was an image, as we just read, that was made, and they had to bow down before that image. There was a worship system, a false worship system, and if you didn't abide by that false worship system, there was a death decree imposed upon those who refused to worship. And of course, God saved the lives of these three worthies, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in the fiery furnace. But this is Daniel 3. Now let's compare it with Revelation 13, 14, and 17. We see the phrase Babylon return. Again, not the government, but a system called Babylon, so it's supposed to make us think of Daniel 3. Again, we hear about an image that is made to the beast. I don't believe it a literal image, but this is another movement, another system where people are inducted into a false worship system, where people are given a death decree if they do not participate in the false worship system. You can read all about this in Revelation 13 and 14. In Revelation 13 primarily. Now, I have a question for you. In ancient Babylon, What was it that prompted the people to bow down and worship the image? What was the catalyst? What was the thing that got them to do it? Take a look at what it says in Daniel 3. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and all kinds of what? Music. All the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So, I ask a question. If in Daniel 3 it was prompted by music, then in the last days, will the last days deception follow the pattern that we've seen develop in comparing the Daniel 3 column with the Revelation column? Will the devil use music to deceive the last day masses? It's almost a silly question to even ask. We know from the first slide of part 3 that the devil was given the gift of music up in heaven, one of the first slides in that presentation. He's of course going to use the gift that he had as a holy angel, Lucifer. Now that he's Satan, he's going to use it for evil ends. How is Satan going to use music to deceive the last day masses? Let's look at sociologists, what they have to say about this last days setting. John Blacking said, music can become a universal language, and through the transformation of individuals, it becomes a vehicle for world peace and the unification of mankind. Now, if you don't have red flags going up in your mind when you hear world peace and the unification of mankind, oh boy, look out, folks. That sounds nice. But this is the veneer over the most satanic movement in human history that's about to burst upon planet Earth. And I wish I could go through a whole series on Revelation right now and share with you last day events that are about to hit. But this world peace and unification of mankind, this ecumenical movement of the combining of all religions is not of Jesus Christ. It does not point to Jesus Christ as the way, the truth, and the life, and the only one by which we may be saved. Let's read from a quotation from a couple from earlier in this series, in this session. Do you remember this one? Take it from a brain guy. I still cannot affect a person's state of mind the way that one simple song can. And the other scholar which said there's probably no other human cultural activity that so controls human behavior. Music is a control mechanism. It'll be a universal language, said John Blacking. It'll unite everybody in peace and unification of mankind. Here we have Dr. Wolfgang Stefani, a musicologist and a scholar, a theologian. He says, in recent decades, talk of a world social formation and the possibility of a strategy for global mobilization were no longer considered a figment of speculative imagination. Because of its universal availability and acceptance, popular music was identified as the major rallying point for the formation of an international youth culture based upon common worldwide tastes and values. Sociologists described popular music as a powerful, cohesive force. That means binding people together. Further, as leading ethnomusicologist David McAllister observed, music seems to be the clearest reinforcement of identity that we have. Could it be, asks Dr. Wolfgang Stefani, that by fostering a homogenized global musical style, a style that is increasingly visible in the Christian music culture, that the stage is being set for a global religious identity response? A response that would allow people of all nations, of all religious backgrounds to say, yes, this is my music. This is who I am. This is my music for being happy and religious, and I am a part of it. I am right at home now. The last day deception, bringing everybody together, frontal lobes off, hypnotic induction, all of this sort of experience of spiritualism coming in, and everybody walks and marches right off the cliff because they feel, the music has told them to feel happy and religious and like I am a part of the great oneness of mankind. Will music play a role? I don't doubt it for a second. The feelings dictated to us by music will overpower the reason because of the kinds of music we've accustomed ourselves to listening to on a regular basis. And don't worry about labels, rock, pop, basically all the popular modern musical styles take their cue from those roots in the rock and roll music movement in the 1950s. You turn on the radio station and pretty much, unless you're on the classical station, you are listening to the kinds of music that he's talking about here. And people after hearing this, they say, but what am I supposed to listen to then? Just hymns and classical music? And we start feeling like we're entitled to listen to worldly things because of the joy and pleasure that we feel we get from it. But I want to remind us what Jesus said. He said the way to destruction is wide and broad. There's a lot of different ways you can get yourself into trouble, whether it's music or anything. But the way to life is narrow. Only a few find it, he said. And we might have to let go of a lot of things that we love and we've become accustomed to make sure that we're in the right place, that we are following the Lamb, and that we are not being herded off into this beast movement, that the whole world followed the beast. I've always wondered, how is the whole world going to follow? How is everybody going to get on board with that? There's got to be something other than the human reason at play there. You know, when we think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I wonder if things would have been different for them if they would have fully immersed themselves in the Babylonian culture. Eat what the Babylonians eat, drink what they drink, listen to what they listen to, do what they do. Would they have stood in the day of trial? I'm convinced that many people in the church today, we don't want to stick out like a sore thumb. We want to fit in. We want to be not too different, right? I'm not going to be able to have an influence on people if I'm so weird and different. Quite the opposite. People respect you when you take a strong stand, and you don't do it in a judgmental or arrogant way. These men were faithful to the Lord, and so when the day of trial came, they stood strong. Let's close with a text from the Bible. The call to God's people in the last days is, "Come out of Babylon, my people. Fallen is Babylon. Come out of her, my people."